Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. How disability carriers view Stevens-Johnson syndrome's claims and what their problems are with understanding these claims. So let's start out with the basics. Do carriers understand SJS syndrome? Well, I will tell you, I don't think so. They don't necessarily understand what has precipitated SJS, and many times they are looking for objective evidence that that will result in the diagnosis. But there is no gold standard test to understand if you've had a reaction, if you will, to the various kinds of medications that I discussed in the last segment of this episode. But clearly, they can measure, if you will, objectively, the impact that the symptoms have, generally by body system. And what do I mean by body systems? I'm also a Social Security disability attorney in addition to being an ERISA disability attorney. And I tend to think in body systems. You remember the body systems that you learned in high school biology. In high school biology, we learned about the pulmonary system. We learned about the skin. We learned about the digestive system. We learned about the visual system. So I think about these cases based on body systems. And I know that disability carriers are looking for an objective evidence of the diagnosis of SJS. They're also going to be looking for objective evidence of the system involvement. So in terms of, for example, a pulmonary condition, they would be looking for objective testing, such as pulmonary function tests. Once they get past, if you will, the objective basis of the diagnosis, I will tell you they don't understand the severity of SJS or its long-term consequences. And they tend to apply a one-size-fits-all approach, and they fail to recognize the disorder's complexity based on multi-system involvement. So can you get long-term disability benefits for SJS? Well, the answer to that is yes, but it depends. It starts with understanding your disability insurance policy or plan, and that there is a definition of disability in each policy or plan, and there's no one uniform definition across the insurance industry in the United States. You need to get out that policy or plan and understand what it is you have to prove to get your benefits. So, for example, you might have a policy or plan that says, look, if you can't do the material and substantial duties of your own occupation, we will pay you benefits for, up to maybe 2 years, depending on the policy term provisions. Now, you obviously need to understand what they mean by disability and what they mean by occupation as you go about answering the kinds of questions that I outlined for you in the last segment of the episode, because you want to be thinking about this in terms of the system involvement. Do you have visual issues? Do you have pulmonary issues? Do you have gastroenterological issues? Do you have issues with any other body system as a result of SJS that could impact your ability to do your own or any occupation? Now, as you're thinking about this and doing your documentation, you also want to think about the things that the carriers just don't understand about SJS. They don't understand the unpredictable course of the condition. So you may have problems with flares that you need to be able to explain in your medical records and as you're presenting your claim to the carrier. They certainly don't understand complications that can affect vision, breathing, or skin sensitivity. They do not understand fatigue and chronic pain. And they don't understand psychiatric symptoms like depression or anxiety stemming from the disfigurement or the pain that you are having just doing the basic activities of daily living. These are things that you need to address in your medical records and in your claim. What are the key steps in the long-term disability claims process? Well, you're going to be asked to complete a work history form that explores the physical, mental, and cognitive demands of your occupation. And you want to note the tasks that you can't perform or you have difficulty performing. So let's think backwards here. If you have visual issues, you may have problems reading screens, working in a bright light. You might have difficulty being working under fluorescent lights. You might have difficulty with just reading documents, paper documents. you want to be able to note those visual problems that you're having as it relates to not only your occupation, but your activities of daily living. So you may have difficulty driving, for example. How about the respiratory function? Well, you may have pulmonary issues that impact your ability to stand, walk, climb, stoop, or bend. So you want to make sure that you're addressing those in your history to your doctor in terms of your symptoms and functionality and in your application. And of course, how you're completing that work history form, because the carrier needs to understand what the occupational demands are, in my view, based on body systems. You might have trouble with dexterity, using your hands, or even wearing protective clothing. Dexterity is important to many jobs. You have to generally be able to engage in bilateral hand movements, shoulder movements. So if you have problems with scarring that impacts your fingers, your wrist, your arms, you may have scarring that impacts your ability to just do fine and gross motor movements, something as simple as picking up coins or keyboarding, or your occupation may require you to wear protective clothing. If you have to don clothing and other equipment, you need to have dexterity to get things on or take things off. You might also have problems with pain and fatigue. Now, that may not be system based, or it may be system based. In other words, if you have a respiratory problem, you probably have shortness of breath, which causes fatigue. If you have visual issues, you might have visual pain. Again, I think about this in terms of pain and fatigue, in terms of body systems. And I want to be able to present to the carrier these particular issues. Now, what you're going to see is you're going to also be asked to take to your doctor forms called attending physician statement forms. And these forms do not ask the right questions, and I think that's on purpose. Now, what I try to do is to supplement an attending physician statement form with the right Social Security residual functional impairment form. So we have RFC forms for skin disorders, for visual impairments, for pulmonary issues, gastroenterological issues. I always want to try to supplement, if you will, that APS form, the disability APS form, with the applicable Social Security disability form. So you can see here that as you go about filing a claim, you want to make sure you're giving, well, one, you understand the definition of disability and occupation, and that you're explaining that to your doctor. You want to make sure that you're really giving a good history to your doctor of symptoms and functionality, particularly between visits, taking photos as appropriate, but making sure they've got that log that you're keeping and make that a part of the claim. You also want to make sure that as you're filling out the work history form, you're thinking backwards. What are the occupational duties that I cannot do or have trouble doing? Again, I think you should be thinking about that based on visual systems. And when you're filling out the activity of daily living form that the carrier is asking you for, which is open-ended, which is a different issue, you need to make sure that you are thinking backwards again. What are the body system involvements? What are my limitations? And lastly, of course, when your doctor fills out those blasted forms, you want to make sure that you've explained to your doctor what your occupational duties are, the problems that you have performing them, and have them address that based on body systems, if you will. So why is that all important? Well, as part of the analysis, the carrier is going to evaluate your occupation. Under the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, which is commonly used in disability claims, they are going to basically classify your work as sedentary, light, medium, or heavy. And they're going to compare your medical records, what your doctor has to say about your limitations, to the occupational duties and say, well, can you do those occupational duties? Can you do some of them? Are the duties that you can do or can't do material and substantial? Again, this is the way in which they're going about the analysis. Hopefully, they'll determine that you can't do your own occupation and pay benefits. But you need to understand that after 24 months, most policies switch to an any occupation standard. And that means that you have to be unable to work in any job or occupation, rather, based on your skills, education, and training. So let me give you an example. It might be that, and this is common, that the carrier thinks that you can do any occupation that allows you to sit. Well, most occupations that require sitting also require visual acuity, they require bilateral manual dexterity, and they require sitting. So if you, because of your SJS rather, have problems with scarring on your hands or fingers, if you have visual issues, if you have scarring on your buttocks or down your legs that make it difficult to sit and you're up and down, those are things that need to be developed, because ultimately it is those system complications and symptoms that can make it difficult, if not impossible, for you to meet the ability to do any occupation, and therefore get your any occupation benefits. So you can see, and I'm harping on it, that we want to develop the symptoms by systems and talk about the limitations functionally, cognitively, psychiatrically, both from an own occupation stage and an any occupation stage, with, of course, the support of your doctor. Got it? Let's take a break.
Are you a professional with questions about your individual disability policy? You need the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. This book gives you a comprehensive understanding of your disability policy, with tips and to-dos that will assist you in submitting a winning disability application. This is one you don't want to miss. For the next 24 hours, we are giving away free copies of the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. Order yours today at disabilityclaimsforprofessionals.com.